pronounce that right, which showed up on affordable lake town rankings with a median home listing price of around $210,000. That's in 2024. That's not exactly free, but for Lake Town in New York, that's practically a real estate version of finding a brand name cereal at the dollar store. We all love that, don't we? The catch is location. The famous parts of the Adirondacks, Finger Lakes, and anything that rich weekenders have already discovered can get expensive fast. But if you're willing to look beyond the glossy vacation towns, New York still has lake areas where you can get scenery, seasons, and a little peace without taking out a mortgage you know you'll never actually pay off. But you know you're going to sell it before then. The kids get a little older and you don't feel like going to the lake anymore, and you sell it off 10 years into that mortgage. That's how it works. New York is a great place to buy a lakefront property or near the lake property. Number 9, Texas. Texas has a surprising amount of affordable lake living because the state is huge and not every lake is sitting right next to Austin tech money, Dallas suburb expansions, or a boat club where everyone wears performance polo shirts and talks about their broker. Zapata, near Falcon Lake and the Mexican border, they've got median listing prices about $178,000, and that's cheaper than many ordinary homes in places where the closest water feature is a retention pond behind a Costco. Is Zapata a great town? It's not the best, but it is cheap. Texas lakefront comes with a few fine print goblins you should know about. Some lakes deal with drought. Water levels swing, heat, and rural isolation are a big part of this. Literally in Zapata, your house can be 10 yards from the lake or 100 yards from the lake, depending on the season and water levels. There are places where the view is amazing, but the summer feels like someone let their giant data center overheat and they opened up the doors to let the heat out and just wiped out the entire county. Still, if you want water access, low prices, and more space, Texas belongs on your list of places to buy a lake house. Number 8, Louisiana. Louisiana is affordable because it has a lot of water and a lot of reasons buyers get nervous around water. That is the Louisiana real estate bargain. Beautiful, unique, culturally rich, and suddenly your insurance quote walks in wearing a ski mask. Lockport near Lake Fields is a pretty good, cheap lake town in a county where the median listing price is around $145,000. That's shockingly low for a place that comes with lake access. I mean, even if Louisiana comes with flooding, storms, humidity, and infrastructure that occasionally feels like it was assembled during a lunch break. Yeah, if we just talk about this on a recent video, the infrastructure in Louisiana is just horrible. But this is one of those states where home prices are only part of the story. Buyers need to study flood zones, insurance costs, elevation, drainage, and storm history. Louisiana can absolutely offer cheap lakefront living, but you better read the paperwork like it contains the location of buried treasure. And if you're going to find some buried treasure, you're going to find it in Louisiana or North Carolina, near where Blackbeard used to hang out. Yeah, Bath. We talked about it the other day. Bath, North Carolina. They think there's hidden treasure there. Go there instead of Louisiana on Lake Town. You might find some treasure. Who knows? Number 7, Illinois. Illinois is not always cheap, especially when property taxes show up with a folding chair and decide to stay forever. But lakefront affordability still exists in parts of this state, especially away from the luxury pockets and the Chicago area towns where everyone seems to have a second home and a boat named after a divorce. Fox Lake made Realtors.com affordable lake town rankings with a median home listing price of about $159,000. That is not bad. That is a strong number for a lake community with access to Chain of Lakes region, boating, fishing, and proximity to Chicago Metro without paying full, I need to be near the office 3 days a week prices. The upside is obvious. Midwest lake access, decent regional connectivity, and more affordability than you ever get in coastal markets. The downside is the obvious also. Illinois property taxes can make your escrow account start smoking, but for buyers who want lake life without crossing into full luxury nonsense, Illinois has options for you, believe it or not. Number 6, Minnesota. Minnesota has so many lakes that eventually you stop asking where the lakes are and start asking where the lakes aren't. It is one of America's Great Lakes states, and while most of the desirable cabins can get pricey, smaller towns still offer real opportunities. I mean, they've got to have some affordable lakefront property here because this is the state of 10,000 lakes or something like that. I read something that's actually like 13,000, but who cares? Albert Lee, surrounded by several lakes, appears on affordable lake lists all the frickin' time with their median home listing price of about $177,000. Not bad for Minnesota. That's a strong example of why Minnesota belongs on this list. You get lake culture, fishing, boating, small town life, and enough water to make other states feel underhydrated. Obviously, the drawback is winter. Lakefront living in Minnesota is gorgeous in July. In January, the lake turns into a frozen parking lot with better scenery. But if you can handle the cold, Minnesota gives buyers one of the best combinations of lake access, community, and affordability in the country. Sure, you got to deal with online trolls that talk about how the state's all corrupt and I'd live in Minnesota in a heartbeat. I don't mind the winter. I've never lived in that kind of winter, so I might change my tune after I've been there a couple of years, but I'd live there. Number 5, Wisconsin. Wisconsin might be one of the best states in America for affordable lake homes because the state understands lake life at a spiritual level. People in Wisconsin don't go to the lake. They migrate there every summer like geese with coolers and a lot of beer. This state loves to drink some beer. Them and Minnesota. Minnesota actually got rid of the law that said there's a thing called drunk in public. They don't have it. I mean, you can still get a DUI for driving drunk and all that, but just being drunk on the sidewalk, it's not a thing there. Peshtigo is a great lake town in Wisconsin. Now, they're a little bit pricey for this list, but they're pretty good. The median home value here is about $199,000. That's not nothing, but in the lake house world, that's still pretty reasonable, especially for Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a great state. It's outstanding. I love Wisconsin. The key in Wisconsin is avoiding the markets that have been invaded by Chicago weekend money. Some lake areas are expensive because every second home buyer from Illinois decided that they needed a quiet cabin, which somehow comes with 6 bedrooms, a wet bar, and a pontoon the size of a school bus. But in smaller towns and lesser-known lake regions, Wisconsin still offers a pretty good option. You just, again, like Minnesota, they got that winter, and that winter will, ruin a lot of that lake time if you're planning on doing it all year. You don't want to be like my dad who's beside himself because he's used to Southern California, and he really can't golf right now. Southern California, that man could golf every single day, but here in the Pacific Northwest, he's got to back off a little bit because it starts to rain and occasionally snows. Wisconsin's a great deal for a lakefront cabin. Number 4, Arkansas. Arkansas doesn't always get the respect it deserves in lakefront conversations, which is exactly why it's still affordable. The state has beautiful lakes, hills, forests, quiet places where you can sit by the water without hearing someone explain cryptocurrency on a paddleboard. I can't ever get roped into another crypto conversation. Bull Shoals on Bull Shoals Lake is a great option with a median listing price of around $199,000. That's very reasonable for a lake town with serious outdoor appeal, which this place does. I mean, do so much worse. Arkansas is not the greatest state, but sort of like Oregon, it's got a buttload of problems, but you can't deny it's a beautiful state when it comes to nature. Both of those. Arkansas is especially appealing for people who want fishing, boating, slower living, a lower housing cost. The trade-off is that some areas are rural enough where your nightlife may involve a porch and a bug zapper. And maybe even listening to one guy in town explain why the old hardware store was better in 1987. But if affordable lake life is the goal, Arkansas is quite a deal. Quite a deal. I'd just go there for retiring. I'd never let my kids go to school in Arkansas. I mean, they got some nice private schools, don't get me wrong, but if you're putting your kids into the general population there, they don't have the greatest numbers. If anyone ever suggests you move to Little Rock, they're not your friend. Keep that in mind. Number 3, Ohio. Ohio's one of those states that people overlook until they realize that actual lakefront options don't always require coming from old money. Lake Erie gets most of the attention, but Ohio also has smaller inland lakes and communities where water access is still somewhat realistic. One great option is Mentor on the Lake, which is on Lake Erie. It's a pretty nice little town with a median listing price of around $199,000. Realtor.com also highlights parts of Lake Erie region as among the more affordable lake house markets, with nearby Erie County, Ohio, showing a median listing price of about $335,000. That was in May of 2025. Ohio lake life is not always glamorous, but that's part of the charm. You get boating, fishing, older lake communities, and prices that are still less ridiculous than the famous vacation markets. It's practical lakefront living, which means the house might not look like it belongs in a magazine, but it also might not financially ruin you. A rare concept these days. Number 2, Missouri. Missouri is one of the best states for people who want lake house without joining a country club or other financial bad decisions. The big name is obviously Lake of the Ozarks, which has gotten more popular and more expensive, but compared to many other famous lake markets, it's still reasonable. The median listing price right now is about $331,000. In Camden County, it's about $399,000. That's not cheap, but for a major lake destination with restaurants, boating, rental potential, and actual infrastructure, it's still surprisingly competitive. I mean, I wouldn't mind living in the Lake of the Ozarks. They got that one place I always talk about, Dick's Halfway Inn. It's a place on the lake. It's owned by a guy named Dick, and it's an inn. Missouri also has cheaper lakes where you can get lakefront property for as low as $210,000, which is pretty good. Missouri's not just one lake wearing sunglasses and yelling from a speedboat. It has a broader lake market menu to choose from. You just have to find the right place. Lake of the Ozarks is not the only lake in Missouri, but it is a pretty cool lake. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about getting some property, buying some real estate by a lake, there's a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Michigan. Michigan takes the top spot because it's basically America's freshwater bargain warehouse. The state has great lakes, shoreline, inland lakes, fishing towns, cabin towns, resort towns, and quiet little communities where lakefront living still feels like it's something a regular person might be able to pull off with planning, patience, and a healthy distrust of listings that say cozy. Rogers City on Lake Huron ranked as one of the most affordable lake towns by Realtor.com in 2024, with a median listing price of about $142,000. Back then, I kind of poked around. It's probably still that accurate, maybe $150,000. That's an eye-opening number for a town that sits on one of the Great Lakes. I mean, come on. Michigan's advantage is supply. When the state has that much water, buyers have more choices. Not every town is Traverse City. Not every lake has been swallowed by luxury buyers in linen pants. You could still find old school lake communities, modest homes, fixer-uppers, and small towns where the lake is the main event instead of a backdrop for someone's rental portfolio. Michigan is not perfect. Winters are real, some towns are remote, and some homes need a lot of work. But when it comes to affordable lakefront living, Michigan gives you the best overall combination of water, inventory, scenery, and prices that still seem connected to planet Earth, which every time I look at Zillow, it's starting to look less and less like a thing. Real estate prices are insane throughout this country. That's why this is a great list. If you want to buy a lakefront home, this might be your best option. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this one, you probably like this one right here. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.
ফুড প্যান্ডার সাথে অর্ডার করুন যে কোনো কিছু প্রয়োজনীয় সবকিছু
Food Panda?
America has a new kind of bad deal. It's 10 states. Not the states that have always been expensive. Everyone knows California, Hawaii, and New York cost far too much. It's about the states that used to make sense, but now seem to be heading in the same direction as California, Hawaii, and New York. Back in the day, they were cheaper, they were easier, they were worth some negative trade-offs, bad weather, weak job markets, and people that say you all. But now housing is climbing, traffic is worse, crime is harder to ignore, and schools are struggling, and they've got more Teslas. Now, to be fair, some of these states are still great, but they just seem to be heading in the wrong direction lately. And it's the same thing California and everyone else has gone through. When they get popular, things start to suck. They get more expensive, more traffic, da-da-da-da-da. The list goes on. So, today we're taking a look at 10 states that quietly became a bad deal. Let's take a look. Number 10, Texas. Texas still sells itself as the promised land for people who want freedom, jobs, space, barbecue, and the ability to buy whatever kind of firearm you want. For years, that pitch was pretty simple. You leave California, come to Texas, buy a giant house with some property, get a truck, and complain about property taxes. And then, of course, you tell everyone back home they're doing life wrong. And to be fair, Texas is still a good deal for a lot of people. The economy is huge, the job market is strong in many areas, and there are still affordable towns if you're willing to live far enough away from the place people actually talk about all the time. Texas has real advantages, not just some collapsing wastelands where tumbleweeds are, fighting feral hogs for control of the schoolyard. But the deal's not what it used to be. Austin got expensive. Dallas-Fort Worth keeps expanding like it's trying to swallow a time zone. Houston traffic feels like a punishment from an ancient civilization. San Antonio is growing fast, and every suburb between the big metros now seems like it has 12 new apartment complexes, 3 car washes, and a chicken restaurant with the line wrapped around the building. The part people forget is Texas saves you money in some places and quietly gets you in others. There's no state income tax, which is wonderful, but property taxes show up like a repo man in a cowboy hat. Home insurance has gotten uglier every single year. School quality depends heavily on where you live, and the traffic has reached the point where some commuters should legally qualify for veterans benefits. Texas is still powerful. Texas is still important. Texas is still loaded with opportunity, but it's become one of those places where people move to escape expensive states, only to help make Texas more expensive and then act shocked when everyone else had the same genius idea. I'm moving to Texas. Yeah, you and hundreds of thousands of other people. Good job. Now it's expensive. Number 9, Oregon. Oregon used to feel like the smart alternative to California. You got forests, mountains, coastlines, decent cities, strange little towns, and enough rain to make every moss-covered fence post feel spiritually fulfilled. It had, we're outdoorsy, but we're also deeply suspicious of normal business hours type of vibe. It was beautiful. That's how it was when I first got here. And to be fair, Oregon still has a lot going on. The scenery is ridiculous. The coast looks like it was designed by someone that had a grudge against boring landscapes. Bend, Eugene, Ashland, and parts of the Willamette Valley still have plenty of appeal. Even Portland, despite all the jokes, still has neighborhoods people love and a cultural identity stronger than most entire states. Portland's got its problems. Oregon's got its problems. But you can't deny the fact that this state is beautiful. That's plain and simple. But Oregon has become too expensive in a way that feels personally insulting. Now, I'm part of the problem. I moved up here from California. I get it. That's not lost on me. Portland is the poster child here. It went from weird but charming to weird, expensive, and why is that guy yelling at a bike rack? It's a true story, by the way. The city still has great food, parks, and neighborhoods, but, the visible decline is part of its urban core now, and it's hurt the state's reputation. That one city, Portland, Oregon, even though it's its biggest city, it's kind of hurt the reputation of all of Oregon. Perception is real. Oregon got pricier while some of the most visible places got rougher around the edges. It's like Portland never got that memo about, you don't raise the prices on a product that is getting worse. Just not how it's supposed to work. Anyway, that makes Oregon a bad deal lately. All of that. It's still beautiful, still has wonderful areas, but when housing costs rise, taxes feel heavy, public safety becomes a concern, and downtown starts looking like someone gave up halfway through a group project, people start asking, what exactly are we paying for? And where did all these people come from that live in tents? Where are they coming from? It's insane. It's insane. It's so expensive in this state. Then we have to pay, if you make too much money in this state, you got to pay an extra tax, or at least in the Portland metro area, to house the homeless. Are we buying more homeless? Because, if that money for those tax dollars are going to fix a situation, it's not fixing anything. It's just bringing more in. It's like, are we hiring new homeless people here in Portland, Oregon? That's my question with my tax dollars. Number 8, North Carolina. North Carolina is one of those states that got discovered so hard, it probably wishes it stayed homesick for a few years. And that's, it was perfect middle ground. Not too expensive, not too cold, not too weird, with mountains on one side and the ocean on the other side. They also had enough growing cities to make every relocation article start drooling on itself. And yes, North Carolina is still a great state in many ways. Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Asheville, Wilmington, Greensboro, and smaller towns across the state all have real appeal. The job market has been strong in key areas, the universities are excellent, and the state offers a lot of variety without making you cross 3 time zones and question why you ever started driving in this state. But that bargain is getting chewed up, and it's getting chewed up fast. The Research Triangle is no longer a cute little secret where you could buy a nice house with pocket lint and a firm handshake. It's the worst kept secret in the South right now. It's a great place to live, but everybody knows about it. Now, Charlotte keeps growing, but the traffic and the sprawl are becoming less southern city on the rise and more Atlanta's younger cousin who just found energy drinks or something like that. Asheville got so expensive, it feels like the mountains started charging admission or something like that. It's weird. And of course, they got hit by a horrible hurricane. The schools and public services are uneven in North Carolina too. This state has excellent pockets, but the statewide picture is not always as polished as the relocation brochure suggests or the real estate agent suggests. Crime varies a lot by city and neighborhoods, and the state's growth has put pressure on roads, housing, schools, infrastructure, and actually created more crime. Basically, North Carolina invited the whole country over and then realized that they only had enough room for parking from 2004. This is still one of the better states on this list. It's not bad, it's not doomed, but it's heading into dangerous territory where the cost is starting to climb faster than the quality of life improvements. Sort of like Portland, getting, not as good, but it's getting way more expensive. And that's how this hidden gem became a crowded jewelry counter with a surge in pricing. Number 7, Georgia. Georgia has been selling the affordable Southern success story for a while now. And honestly, parts of their story are very true. Very true, actually. Atlanta is a major economic engine. The airport can get you anywhere on Earth, including a couple planets if Delta adds a few more routes. And the state has serious job growths in film, logistics, tech, healthcare, and manufacturing. They're building stuff in Atlanta and Georgia. Overall, it's no longer just an agricultural state. It's actually a movie powerhouse. Georgia is still a good state for a lot of people. The suburbs north of Atlanta keep attracting families. Savannah is beautiful. Athens has college town energy. Columbus, Macon are smaller cities, and they all have pockets of promise. Not so much Columbus. That place is a hole, whether you like to admit it or not, but it is growing. Now, there is opportunity here, and it would be silly to pretend otherwise. But Georgia also has become one of the worst deals because the problems are growing right along with the population. Atlanta's traffic is not traffic anymore. It's a full contact emotional event. Housing has gotten much more expensive in areas people want to live. Cheaper parts of Georgia are often cheap for a reason. I mean, that's kind of everywhere, but in Georgia, it's really a thing. Georgia, for all its progress, it can get backwards in a hurry if you, get into the backwoods of Georgia. Poverty remains a serious problem in parts like that, and the crime concerns continue to shape how people talk about Atlanta and other cities, like Columbus. Columbus is right outside of Fort Benning, and that place blows. Oh my God, it's horrible. Last time I was there was 2019, but oh yeah, it sucks. Georgia has the classic bad deal warning signs: strong job growth, rising prices, overloaded infrastructure, struggling schools in too many places, and metro areas that are expanding like they're trying to annex the moon. It's still a state with a lot of upsides, but lately it feels like Georgia's charging you for the future when it really hasn't nailed down the present yet. Number 6, Nevada. Nevada used to be an escape hatch for people from California that wanted lower taxes, cheaper housing, sunshine, and enough chaos to keep life from getting too beige. Las Vegas was affordable, Reno was a cool little alternative, and the state had that do what you want, just don't ask too many questions personality. And Nevada still has its strengths. Las Vegas has become more than casinos, but the deal has changed. Las Vegas housing is no longer the cheap desert jackpot it used to be. Prices climbed hard during the migration wave, especially as Californians arrived with home equity and the confidence of people who think paying $600 for a stucco triangle is normal. Then there's the schools. Nevada has had education struggles for years, and growth has not magically fixed those struggles. Traffic in Las Vegas is worse. Water concerns are real. Crime concerns remain part of the state, and the cost of living has moved close enough to the national average that old bargain label feels a little outdated. Nevada is still interesting. It still has no state income tax. It still offers a lifestyle some people love, but it is getting expensive while still carrying many of the same old weaknesses. And that's not a deal. That's a casino buffet charging steakhouse prices. And that's Nevada's deal now. Number 5, Arizona. Arizona used to be a sunny escape for retirees and California refugees who wanted lower costs with fewer lectures. Phoenix was affordable, Tucson had character, and the state offered warm weather, desert scenery, and enough golf courses to make your knees ache just looking at the map. Arizona is still a great fit for some people, just not as many people as it used to be. The state has strong job growth in certain industries, beautiful landscapes, and fast-growing suburbs with newer housing and amenities. Plenty of people move there just because they love it. It's not about pretending Arizona had nothing to offer. It does. It has a lot to offer. Yeah, it's just not... Is it worth it anymore? The affordability story here has been beaten with a pool noodle until it stopped moving. Phoenix and its suburbs have gotten expensive fast. Rents climbed, home prices jumped. The state went from affordable alternative to California light, now with more scorpions and steering wheels that burn your fingertips. You'd never be able to, get a fingerprint done by the police again. Water concerns like Nevada are a long-term issue, whether people want to talk about them or not. They need a desalinization plant, and they're not even near the ocean. Schools remain a mixed bag. Poverty remains a concern in many communities, and crime issues vary widely depending on where you live. That's true for every state, but sometimes you get some gaps and you get some really bad areas. Arizona's starting to see some of those. The biggest problem is that Arizona's old trade-off is weakening. People used to say, sure, it's brutally hot, but at least it's cheap. Now it's brutally hot and not as cheap. Once a place loses the affordability excuse, people start noticing the other problems fast. Funny how that works. You could overlook a lot of things when you're saving some money, but when you're not saving money, you find a lot to bitch about. Number 4, South Carolina. South Carolina has been having a moment. Retirees love it, remote workers discovered it, Charleston became expensive, Greenville got trendy, Myrtle Beach keeps being Myrtle Beach, which is either a selling point or a warning label at this point. There's still a lot to like about South Carolina. It's charming, towns, beaches, history, warm weather, and some genuinely nice places to live. Greenville has improved dramatically. Charleston is beautiful. The state has drawn major manufacturing investment and continues to grow. It's not hard to see why people keep moving here. It really isn't. I love Charleston, South Carolina. I love Charleston, West Virginia, too. Maybe it's just a thing I have with Charlestons. I don't know. But this is where the bad deal alarm starts flashing. South Carolina is getting more expensive, especially in areas people actually want to live. Coastal communities have seen a major price hike in recent years. Insurance is an issue, hurricane risks, obviously, and, the housing, the demand is it's just making things more pricier. Meanwhile, the state's education and safety metrics are not exactly strutting around with a championship belt. The schools are weak in too many places. Poverty is still a major issue, mostly in the small towns. Crime concerns remain serious in parts of the state. Roads and infrastructure haven't kept pace with growth, and traffic in popular areas gets ugly fast. Charleston's charm is undeniable, but at some point the charm doesn't really make up for the fact that you're paying premium prices to sit in traffic near a swamp waiting for a hurricane to climb up the back of your car. South Carolina is still a great state for the right person, but it's becoming more expensive before becoming consistently better, I guess you could say. Number 3, Tennessee. Tennessee might be the most obvious great state, wrong direction case in the country. 10 years ago, it felt like a cheat code. Nashville was booming, Knoxville was affordable, Chattanooga had momentum, and the state had mountains, music, low taxes, and a cost of living that made people move from all over the country and, in some cases, the world. People from the coast acted like they found some buried treasure. And Tennessee is still great in a lot of ways. It's got beautiful landscapes, strong culture, growing job market, no state income tax, and some genuinely excellent cities and towns. Knoxville and Chattanooga are very appealing. Nashville's still an economic powerhouse for the state. East Tennessee remains one of the prettiest parts of the country. I wouldn't go anywhere near Memphis, but, to each their own. But the bargain keeps getting slapped around. Nashville got expensive fast. Really fast. Knoxville's been discovered also, and once the internet finds your affordable mountain-adjacent town, the clock starts ticking, and theirs has been ticking for a few years now. The state also has a problem with rising prices that's not solved. Education stats are weak. Crime is a serious concern in several cities. Healthcare access and outcomes aren't exactly bragging material for this state. Poverty remains an issue in rural areas and urban neighborhoods, and Nashville traffic has gone from I should have packed a lunch to maybe I should have stayed home this year. Tennessee's not that bad. In fact, it's still one of the more appealing states in America for certain people. But it's becoming a worse deal as the costs keep rising and the services keep getting weaker. Number 2, Florida. Florida is the grand cathedral of used to be affordable. For decades, it was the retirement escape. Eastern prices, you moved to Florida because it was sunny, cheaper, and full of people who do really stupid stuff. Incredible stuff to the point where they actually memes about men in Florida. That's, you move there to see those people in the wild. I know I would. It's just not the same anymore. These people know we make fun of them all the time, and they're kind of watching their P's and Q's these days. No longer do we get stories of a guy trying to squat hump alligator on the side of the highway. Florida's still attractive. Let's not pretend otherwise. It has beaches, no state income tax, strong population growth, major metros, tourism, healthcare jobs, ports, and warm weather. For wealthy retirees, remote workers, and people with strong incomes, it, still makes perfect sense. There are plenty of people living there who absolutely love Florida. But Florida's become a bad deal for a growing number of regular people. Housing prices exploded in many areas. Rents climbed. Homeowners insurance turned into a monthly horror film. That is the worst. If you ever want to just read some horrible things about, how expensive things got, just type in Florida homeowners insurance and buckle up because it's an upsetting read. And it's not just that. Condo fees, HOA fees, flood risk, car insurance, hurricane deductibles, and property taxes all started joining hands like a financial doomsday chorus. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to another state or a city or anywhere in the country, there is a link for a website called Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Colorado. Colorado is still beautiful enough to make people say stupid things like, maybe I don't need savings. The mountains are stunning. The outdoor lifestyle has jobs and homeless. Boulder is just Boulder. Fort Collins is appealing. Colorado Springs has grown fast. The whole state still has one of the strongest lifestyle brands in America, years after John Denver died. And yes, Colorado is still a great deal for, I'd say, mostly younger people. If you have strong income, love the outdoors, and can afford the housing, it can be one of the best places to live in the country. This is not a state with nothing to offer, so I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that for any of these states. Colorado has plenty to offer, and that's exactly why it's gotten so expensive. That's how it always works. The problem is that Colorado's price tag has gotten obnoxious. Housing costs are high, and even smaller towns near the mountains have been pulled into the affordability grinder. Places that used to feel quirky and accessible now feel like they require a trust fund, a remote tech job, and a family member who bought the property in 1998 and accidentally became royalty. Denver's also changed. The city still has strong neighborhoods and opportunity, but it also has visible urban issues like the homeless, public safety concerns, property crimes, traffic, and a downtown that doesn't always match the glossy relocation videos. I'm, guilty of showing those glossy videos. The gap between Colorado's fantasy and Colorado's daily reality has widened, and the people are starting to, pick up on that. That's why Colorado takes the top spot on this list. It's still one of the most desirable states, but it also has quietly become one of the worst deals. You're paying premium price for mountains that you only get to visit every so often. Traffic keeps getting worse. There's crime concerns in key areas, and the urban core it's just lost a lot of its shine. Colorado is still gorgeous, but the value proposition has frostbite. It's too bad. I love Colorado. Beautiful state. All right, thanks for watching. If you like that video, you'll probably like this video being shown right here. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম শ্রোতা ভাইয়েরা 45 থেকে 50 মানুষ জীবনের কত পথ পেরিয়েছেন অভিজ্ঞতাই আসল সম্পদ আপনার মতো মানুষের সাথে কথা বলার মজাই আলাদা পপো লাইভে আসুন একটু গল্প করি আপনার অপেক্ষায় রইলাম
Did you know that there's one state in the U.S. where it's illegal to refuse someone a glass of water? That's on this video, and it is considered one of the states with the most freedom. Let's get into it. Number 10, Texas. Texas has spent the last few decades branding itself as the state where freedom rides a horse, carries a brisket, and refuses to ask permission to anyone. And to be fair, when it comes to income taxes and business, Texas earns a lot of that reputation. There is no state income tax here, which is a big deal. And you'll notice it's a reoccurring theme as this list goes on. But that alone makes a lot of people from California and New York stare off into the distance like they just heard angels tuning a fiddle. Texas also has a very strong business climate, lots of job growth, and a general attitude that if you want to start something, build something, or sell something, the state's not going to make you fill out a binder full of paperwork so thick it could stop a bullet. Unlike California, where you fill out enough paperwork to keep you safe from a cruise missile just for a lemonade stand. But Texas isn't quite as free as people might think. The Cato Institute's Freedom Index points out that Texas performs very well economically, but much weaker when it comes to personal freedom, especially around criminal justice, the weed, gambling, and some other personal liberty issues. In other words, Texas is free in a start your business and buy a ranch kind of way, but not always as free as do whatever you want, nobody cares if you don't hurt anyone kind of way. Still, for people fleeing high-tax states, Texas looks pretty attractive. It has jobs, land, sunshine, no income tax, and enough personal space that your neighbor might need binoculars to judge your lawn. Number 9, Indiana. Indiana doesn't always get invited into the cool Freedom State conversations. Indiana just gets the job done, and nobody writes poems about it. If Indiana was a person that went to the gym, they wouldn't be posting about it on social media, and they sure as hell wouldn't be taking pictures. They'd just get in there and do the work. Mostly because Indiana has the personality of a pet rock. But quietly, in the background, Indiana does a lot right. The Cato Institute places Indiana among the top 10 states for overall freedom, and the Fraser Institute ranks it highly for economic freedom. That means Indiana may not be as flashy, but it gives residents a pretty decent combination of lower regulatory BS. It isn't trying to reinvent your life every legislative session. It's also a strong state for people who want stability. Housing is still relatively affordable compared to much of the country. Small businesses have an easier way to go. They don't have to fight through the bureaucratic jungle with a machete and a name drop. And once you get outside their metro area, there's very much a mind-your-own-business culture. Number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is interesting because it always gets the same Freedom State hype as places like Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. It's like the quiet guy at a barbecue who owns 6 businesses, pays cash for everything, and somehow knows how to fix everything with an engine made since the 1940s. The Fraser Institute ranks Oklahoma high for economic freedom, putting it near the top among North American states and countries. And that's a big reason it makes this list. Oklahoma tends to be friendly to business, relatively affordable, and less obsessed with regulating every square inch of your daily life. From guns to over-the-top conspiracies, they let you drown in both of them. The state's also made some moves on personal freedom over the years, which is great. The Cato Institute notes that Oklahoma has gained ground on personal freedom due to changes involving gun rights, weed laws, booze freedom, and criminal justice reform. That gives you a little more balance than some states that are economically free but socially strict enough to make a church lady embarrassed for them. Oklahoma still has its problems. Rednecks, tornadoes, Education, healthcare, and rural properties are not small issues. But if the category is where does the government leave you alone most of the time, Oklahoma deserves a place on that list. Now, the real thing that sucks is you have to live in Oklahoma to live those freedoms. And Oklahoma kind of blows. Number 7, Tennessee. Tennessee has become one classic I'm done with high taxes and nonsense relocation states. People move here for lower taxes, cheaper living, warmer weather, and the general feeling that Nashville is booming while parts of California are busy regulating the shadow of your duplex. Tennessee has no state income tax, which is a major draw like we've already talked about. It also tends to score well economically and has long performed strongly in freedom rankings. Cato specifically notes that Tennessee is one of the states that has historically done well and remains in the top 10 overall. For retirees, business owners, remote workers, and people who don't want to pay state income tax for the privilege of sitting in traffic, Tennessee has curb appeal. The state gives off a strong handle your own business vibe, especially outside the big metro areas. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. Tennessee is stronger on economic freedom than personal freedom, and the Cato Institute places it among the states that do well economically, but not well when it comes to personal freedom. So, Tennessee is not a libertarian wonderland where bald eagles personally notarize your independence papers. It's more like, keep your taxes low, run your business, own your property, and try not to ask too many weird questions. Number 6, Idaho. Idaho has become the unofficial escape hatch for people who want mountain space, lower regulations, and fewer conversations about whether their compost bin needs municipal approval. If you ask too many questions about composting in Idaho, eventually you're going to run into someone that says, it's trash, just put it in the can and put it on the street, you freaking hippie. The Fraser Institute also ranks Idaho very high for economic freedom. That's a big deal. Idaho has built a reputation as a state where business is relatively easy and taxes aren't as crushing as places on the coast. And the government usually isn't trying to micromanage every corner of your life. Idaho's appeal is simple. People want land, safety, outdoor access, and fewer rules. That's why it has attracted so many transplants from other states, where buying a house in those states may require either generational wealth or a pact with a suspicious woodland spirit. But Idaho's another state with freedom split. Economically, it does very well. Personally, the Cato Institute places it among the states that are economically freer, but personally less free. So Idaho is great if your dream is property, business, mountains, and not being taxed into a decorative skeleton. It's less perfect if your definition of freedom leans heavily into personal lifestyle liberties. But still, for the leave me alone crowd, Idaho is one of the most obvious states in America. Number 5, Arizona. Arizona is one of those states that feels like it was designed by someone who wanted sunshine, space, and fewer people asking me what I'm doing in that shed with a chainsaw. The Cato Institute ranks Arizona as the 5th freest state overall. It also notes that Arizona has seen major improvements since 2010 and became especially strong in educational freedom and regulatory reform. That gives Arizona a pretty strong claim here. Arizona has also been one of the biggest relocation states for people leaving California. Some come for retirement, some come for jobs, some come because they saw their California property tax bill and whispered to themselves, absolutely not. And then they started packing before dinner, and they don't care if they do have to give every jackaloon a glass of water if they ask. The state has a lot of freedom-friendly features, business growth, schools, lower regulatory pressure compared to many coastal states, and a culture that still has plenty of Western, don't bother me, I won't bother you energy. The downside? It's heat. Hot as hell there. But when it comes to government leaving people alone, Arizona still belongs high on any list about freedom. Number 4, Nevada. Nevada is basically America's adult supervision optional state. Cato ranks Nevada 4th overall and describes it as a longtime leader in personal freedom. That makes sense. Nevada has built an entire state identity around the idea that adults are adults, money is money, and if you want to make questionable decisions under neon lights, that's between you, your wallet, and whatever happened after midnight. There's no state income tax. That alone puts Nevada on the freedom map. But Nevada also stands out because it's just economically loose and has a broader personal liberty streak than many states that talk a big game about freedom but quietly keep the rule book under the couch. I mean, since forever, it's been one of the only states that allowed gambling that wasn't on a reservation. Of course, you also have the freedom to buy hourly company if you want. I mean, outside of Clark County. You could have any firearm you want in this state just about. It's incredible. I saw years ago there was a service or an experience you could have, whatever, excursion, and you could go fly around on a helicopter and shoot targets in the desert with a machine gun. People paid a lot of money to do this when they could have just joined the army like I did and get to do it for free, to the point where you don't want to do it anymore. Nevada is also friendly for business, especially compared to neighboring California. That's one reason so many people and companies have looked across the border and thought, wait, I can keep more money and have fewer headaches? Why didn't anyone mention this before? The downside is that Nevada can be expensive in popular areas, especially around Las Vegas and Reno. Water is a long-term concern, and the desert is not exactly forgiving. But when it comes to personal freedom, Nevada is one of the strongest examples in the country. Number 3, South Dakota. South Dakota is what happens when a state looks at big government and says, no thanks, we got wind, cows, and enough gravel roads to hide from the paperwork. Cato ranks South Dakota 3rd overall for freedom. The Fraser Institute also ranks it pretty high for economic freedom. It also has, guess what? No state income tax, a low-key regulatory environment, and a strong reputation for being friendly to businesses and personal independence. Now, South Dakota's not for everyone. This place has pretty rough winters. Like I tried to ride a motorcycle someplace in winter and my crotch got stuck to the seat. But if you want low taxes, light regulation, and a government that generally doesn't hover over your daily life like a drone with a clipboard, South Dakota is one of the best options in America, and that's part of the reason it's become so popular over the last handful of years. Even with the harsh winters, people are moving to South Dakota because it's like you could live a life there without being under the thumb of the man every single day. I like South Dakota, I like winter, I don't know why I'm not living there. I think I'd prefer Wisconsin over that, but it's a great option. Number 2, Florida. Florida is one of the biggest freedom magnets in the country, and not just because people like to live near palm trees and watch alligators casually become neighborhood celebrities. A lot of people like to move there so they can watch the evening news and hear things that some dude did and think, yeah, I'm a lot smarter than that guy. Cato always ranks Florida in the top 5. It has since forever for fiscal policy. It also points out that Florida's improvements over the last decade or so has been driven mostly by fiscal policy, including lower government consumption, taxes, and debt. That's always the big draw. No state income tax. Most states that have no income tax are also a very popular state, which totally makes sense. I've never known a single person in my entire life that's excited on April 15th. A strong economy, a large retirement base, business-friendly policies, and a state culture that often markets itself as a place where people go when they're tired of being told what to do by colder, more expensive states. Florida's not as cheap as it used to be, so let's not be under any illusion there. It has gotten expensive, and if you watch this channel long enough, you